Alexander Isak adamant he will not play for Newcastle again.
Isak doesn't owe the club anything. What Newcastle would have done for him if he hadn't played very well would have been bugger all. It's a Faustian pact. You know, you will pay this price or you will go away. It's really simple. I've never heard so much crap and excuses made for not doing things properly. I will set you guys on fire unless you play properly with me and my football club. End of discussion. Get your head around it. You shut your mouth, agent, and understand your position in the equation. I hope that Newcastle are bold enough, big enough and strong enough at ownership level to turn around and say, I don't think so, son.
About a couple of hours ago, Simon, Ornstein tells us Alexander Isak adamant he will not play for Newcastle again. Even if window closes without exit, the 25-year-old views that his Newcastle career is over and no wish to reintegrate. Club says he's not for sale, but exploring the market amid Liverpool interest, and the striker wants Liverpool. That was according to David Ornstein. Alex Crook has been reporting exactly the same thing. And now the place is in uproar. Now, it's my understanding that the squad, the Newcastle squad, the players and the staff haven't been in for a couple of days. They've had a couple of days off and they're all in there later. I'll get your take on this later on, Simon, as how the ownership might view this. But it struck me that just a matter of months ago, I was up in the northeast on the occasion that Newcastle played Arsenal. It was a packed house, of course it is. It always is at Newcastle United. And the fans were in fine voice. And Alexander Isak that day scored the only goal of the game. And he spoke to me afterwards.
You know, I love it here, and I love playing in front of this crowd and these fans. And you know, we just want to keep winning. I just want to do good and keep scoring goals, and we will all be happy.
I love it here, and I love it in front of these fans. And he was talking to me just straight after the end of the game, and he was thrilled to have scored the only goal of the game. And now this, Isak adamant he will not play for Newcastle again. If you didn't hear Gabby on breakfast, he really let loose.
Wow. I mean... Wow. Who does he think he is, by the way?
Correct.
Like,
Correct.
Listen, I can have banter with Newcastle,
Correct.
but like, who do you think you are, mate?
Correct, mate.
Who do you think you are? Disgusting. What that club's done for you.
And by the way, have a think about
Jesus.
this. Have a think about this. If you're Liverpool, or you're Liverpool fans, is that the kind of person you want to be signing?
Real Madrid won him in 2 years when he's 27. He'll do the same to you.
Of course you will.
Wow.
Of course you will.
Ali, and the fact that Newcastle missed out on Shesko, they've got every right to say, listen, you're going nowhere. We've lost Callum Wilson. We can't get Wisher over the line yet as well. We're not going into the season. They've got Villa on Saturday. Who does this guy think he is? Like, you've had a fantastic season.
Yeah.
Settle down a bit, mate. If it doesn't suit the club, shut up. Get your boots on. Big season for Newcastle. Want to start the season well. Villa away, tough game. And now you're saying you're adamant you don't want to play. Like, what?
That's unbelievable.
Wow, that's wound me up.
That was Gabby and Ali just a short time ago. So months ago, Isak standing with me at St James's Park. I love this place. He scored the only goal of the game. They beat Arsenal by a single goal to nil. Now reports that he's adamant he will not play for Newcastle again. Simon, my goodness, I cannot wait to hear you let go on this. How hardball can Newcastle now afford to be with Isak?
Well, in part, it's their own fault. The vacuum of leadership that seems to exist in Newcastle has created an entitlement in the player that they can trot out these platitudes about what they believe they had an understanding towards, or what gentleman's agreement, or what they were led to believe is now being reneged on, as a backdrop to suggesting they can behave as they want. If the leadership had been clear and specific and explicit to the player from the outset, and not allow it to be seeded in the player's mind and his representation that somehow or another they're going to achieve what they want, then we may still have a problem, but we might not quite have the same problem that we've got now. Gabby is right and wrong in equal measure. First of all, Isak doesn't owe the club anything. Isak signed for the club and he's played for the club and performed well for the club. So it's a partnership between the club and the player. The club didn't give him anything. The club gave him a contract and he played to his natural ability. So the idea that, you know, that look what Newcastle's done for him. What Newcastle would have done for him if he hadn't played very well would have been bugger all. That's what they've done for him. They'd be trying to sell him out the door. But because he's done well for them and done his job, it's a Faustian pact. So the idea that look at what Newcastle have done for him, Well, look what he's done for Newcastle. So I get the point there. The reality of the situation is very simple. We are talking about quotes that are not attributed to the players. We're talking about understandings from journalists, and I do not suggest that David Ornstein doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a top journalist, and he probably will have been fed this, but we haven't got any direct quotes at this moment in time. So the player is using the media to funnel information through so that he can say, well, I didn't actually quite mean that when the time comes to pass.
Of course, no doubt
we know that these things will be resolved.
Yeah.
We have wars going on. We have countries in dispute. We have terrible situations around the world, and at some point these things come to a resolution, and this will come to a resolution at some point. My hope for Newcastle is that they concentrate the mind of this player. What I'd like to see in situations like this is the unions do something meaningful for a change, like talk about the players' conduct and expectation of players and how they should play for their club. Because if a player is suggesting through the media, whichever media channel it is, that he's not going to play for the club again, then that shouldn't be something that should be allowed, because a contract has to mean something.
Right.
It's not about contracts being breached, like the guy that sued the UEFA for the compensation clauses as a result of the Russian club that didn't want him anymore and then held his registration. And we've seen all the freedom of argument around contracts in recent times. This is a player that's got a 3-year contract with Newcastle United. And if Newcastle want to be a football club of significance, they have to control their own destiny.
So if you're Newcastle, are you calling Isak's bluff?
I am calling two parties bluff. I'm calling, if indeed bluff is expression, I would have said to Liverpool, and I would imagine there has to have some conversation, you will pay this price or you will go away. It's really simple. You're not going to agitate. You can do as much as you want, and you can do it in a fashion that you believe is befitting of a big football club, but you're not going to get in for less than this. And you, son, are not going for less than that. So if they don't meet that expectation, you will do as you're told, in the same way that Marinakis filled the void. Whatever you may think about the idea, or it's very simple, Simon, to say what you would and wouldn't do because you did it 20 years ago. Well, it's just been done by Marinakis.
What, Morgan Gibbs-White?
Because he made clear in the player's mind and the player's representation and the idea that people were being inappropriate in their conduct. I will set you guys on fire unless you play properly with me and my football club.
Yeah.
Metaphorically speaking.
One of the key lines in this bombshell tweet from Ornstein, to my mind, is when the word reintegrate comes along. Has no wish to reintegrate.
Yes, but Jim,
if he has no wish to reintegrate, it's going to be a bloody hard job for Eddie and everybody else here.
But you just played a clip.
Get him back in.
People change their minds. People change their positions, and people change. They can adapt their shtick in the same way that you just played out a message from him at the time, which I imagine was pretty apt. I enjoy playing in front of this football club, football fans.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean he enjoys playing in front of this football fans for the rest of his natural born life, does it?
No, I know that, but we're talking about a few months ago.
So then it's not.
If Liverpool weren't in big for him,
so it's not beyond the.
Would he be saying this? No, he wouldn't.
So it's not beyond the wit of man for him to change his position on the fact that he doesn't want to reintegrate, if indeed he has the courage to actually say that out loud himself. Because he won't have the courage to say it out loud himself, because he'll realise that it's directly attributable to him and there's no road back from that. Right now, there's loads of room for road back for everybody.
Yeah.
There's loads of room for everybody to go, well, I never said this and he never said that, because no one's saying anything on the record.
Which, why now, Simon, should Liverpool increase their offer? Isak's doing the hard graft for them.
To a point. Depends how resolute Newcastle are and how significant a football club they think they are.
Do you know something? It took me back. And I think Isak's got to be careful, because it took me back to, I think it was 97, 98. I'd just gone to Sky. Pierre Van Hooijdonk, once of Celtic, then at Nottingham Forest. He was successful initially with Forest. He said he'd been told previously he could leave the club and that the club's owners had failed to deliver on their promises to him regards to strengthening. Forest they played hardball, refused to allow him to be transfer listed again, but he went back over to Holland and trained with NEC Breda, virtually saying, "Tell me tell me when this is all sorted." It wasn't sorted, and the club won the day. He had to come back, and he played for them again. Not for long.
I would suggest,
but he had to come back.
I would suggest that the dynamics have changed. Players have got more control of their own destiny after 27 years after that event. But again, it goes
very similar situation.
It has a similar feel about it, because it's a player that doesn't want to play for a football club all of a sudden because he thinks there's an opportunity better for himself, and he's entitled to think that. As is Isak. What he's not entitled to do is down tools. Now, we constantly hear this ridiculous notion that agents want everything tied up. They want to know exactly where they stand. And now we live in a world where they can turn around and say out loud, we had an understanding, we had a gentleman's agreement. I've never heard so much crap and excuses made for not doing things properly, or reworking and re-engineering the information to your own favour.
So answer me this. Who can afford to dig their heels in hardest now? The club or the player?
It depends what you mean by fault. Do you really think that the Saudis give a monkeys about 150 million quid? They don't. They're not running the football club, it would appear.
Well, they do when there's PSR.
Well, they do and they don't right now, because ultimately they're being very compliant with the football establishment. But notwithstanding that, I don't think they're actively involved in running the club on a day-to-day basis. I'll be interested to see who is running it. Darren Eales is the chief executive, very capable operator. He stepped out due to ill health. You've got other people in the mix. The sporting director that a year ago everyone was saying was the problem is now everyone saying could have been the solution.
Right,
Make
Paul
your mind
Mitchell's
up.
gone.
Yeah,
You're
but a year ago he was a problem.
And you're saying what Alan Shearer's saying. Shearer's saying, I don't know why they haven't appointed anyone yet, or if that has hindered them in the transfer market, because I'm not inside the club, but from outside the club, it's not a good look. It's a mess. It begs the question, who's making the big decisions? Now, if a decision has to be made, we don't know who's going to make it. What decision would you make?
If I was in situ.
Right.
But I wouldn't have let it get away from me the way that's gotten away from them. If you start the dynamic very clearly in the way that potentially others do, which is very clear to the player. First of all, we don't have an understanding. Second of all, you're not going to do this. Third of all, it's on our terms. End of discussion. Get your head around it. You shut your mouth, agent, and understand your position in the equation, and we'll see where it falls out. If Newcastle, if Liverpool want to buy you, they'll pay 150 million quid. If they don't pay 150 million quid, you're not going. Right, so you be clear on that.
And you're not going, and you're confident you can reintegrate into the squad.
But what they've done, Jim, in most things in life, if you allow somebody to create their own narrative, they'll start to believe their own version of the truth, which is now that there's a sense of entitlement that actually we should be able to move. We've been told this, and probably none of the above is true, but you've let that train leave the station. It's about how you put it back into the situation where you've got some control over it. I hope that Newcastle are bold enough, big enough, and strong enough at ownership level to turn around and say, I don't think so, son.
Wow. Okay. David Ornstein tweeted, Alexander Isak adamant he will not play for Newcastle again, even if the window closes, without the exit of the 25-year-old. Liverpool, we know, have bid £110 million, but the offer was rejected. Newcastle are holding out for a lot more than that. But as you rightly point out, Simon, Saudi-owned Newcastle, do they need the money? No. But 150 million said to be the magic figure. But at the moment, Isak's saying, that's it, I'm done with Newcastle. An enormous number of you are trying to come through to us this morning, and I'm delighted about that. 03717 223344. Simon and I do the show, but it's your show, and we make that clear to you. There's a message just in front of me there. I'm done with him. It's all over for me and Isak. I'm a big Newcastle fan. He's thrown everything in our faces today, and he's shown the club and us the greatest disrespect possible. Who does he think he is? Kevin's a big Newcastle fan. Kevin, you heard Simon in Full Throttle a short time ago. Where do you stand on this? Are you done with Isak?
Good morning, guys. Yes, I'm 100% done with him. I never thought Isak would behave this way. He always seemed to be quite a nice sort of chap, but he's just thrown everything at us, and really I would put him in the reserves for the rest of the season. I would not sell him to Liverpool at all in any circumstances. Just make him play with the reserves and treat him with the disrespect he's treated Newcastle United fans, and more so Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe doesn't deserve this.
Kevin, Simon's right beside me as always. Is that doable, Simon? Throw him in the reserves.
Well, everything's doable. I mean, everything has a cause and effect, doesn't it? I think you never do things with emotion attached to it. You do things with a resolve and a thought process that achieves the best outcome for you. And the situation for Newcastle is that the conventional wisdom will say, if you've got a player that's unhappy, get him out of the building. The cause and effect of that is you get him out of the building, the next player that's unhappy does the same thing. So you've got to set a culture inside a football club that you mean what you say and you say what you mean. I think it's Newcastle's, I think in part with all due respect to the Newcastle fans, because they're not party to this observation, but the Newcastle ownership, which has been wonderful for Newcastle post Mike Ashley, it's done most of the things it said it's going to do, has let this situation get away from them. This situation was always going to come up. Isak was always going to be sought after. He was always going to be a player in demand. So there was always this position where they needed to clarify very clearly with the player what they were going to be doing with him, because we can't listen to players turn around and say we had a gentleman's agreement, we had an understanding, it's all rubbish.
But Simon, what more can Newcastle do? He's got 3 years on his contract.
Well, they can communicate very clearly to the player.
They've said you're not going for 110 million. Get on with it.
But I think that the player has built up. As I say, we can only look from the outside in. and judge it from what we're being allowed to see, and ultimately what we're seeing being quoted through other sources that the player may be utilising for his own advantage, or the agent may be utilising. If you are much stronger and more robust from the outset, you set the rules of engagement, you set the manner in which people are prepared to operate, and then they really have to go off the reservation in terms of be front and centre themselves, rather than use channels and use back channels and use message carriers. They'll have to do it themselves. Now, there's an element of that going on because Isak is apparently staying away from the club, not doing this, training in Spain, but we don't know the mechanics of why that might have manifested itself.
Well, he's apparently back now.
Well, he's back now. So the reality of it is what we're all looking at now is a set of circumstances that are going to play out to a conclusion. My belief is if the Newcastle had been stronger in the same way that Nottingham Forest were strong enough with Morgan Gibbs-White, when that situation reared its head, when big clubs don't want a player to leave, more often than not, that player doesn't leave. They leave on the terms of the club. In this instance, Newcastle are morphing from a club that's very big in Newcastle with a very passionate fan base into a club that wants to be amongst the legacy football clubs.
Yeah.
And the step is a difficult one
because
the owners are well seeded financially. They're pretty compliant with the governance of the game. They're not pushing the envelope. In this instance, I think the vacuum of leadership has allowed Isak and his agent to do what they're doing.
What would your message to Isak's agent be this morning?
I don't think it needs a message from me. I think Newcastle need to make a decision about how far they're prepared to push this with the player and sit with it. I would imagine that somewhere between 110 and 150 million quid gets this deal done, because Liverpool don't get their way and Newcastle don't get their way.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not a deal, is it?
You spoke about legacy clubs. Liverpool is a legacy club. Many Liverpool fans in amongst a huge number of Newcastle fans trying to get through. I'll take one. Ricky, you're a big Liverpool fan. Good morning. Where do you stand in all of this?
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on the show. If I was as a neutral, I think Newcastle are right as well. They have the power and they've got the player and they've got a right to what they say. But I think as a Liverpool point of view, they want the player. Stop messing around and go and buy him. Give them 150 million. Just say, right, okay, we'll put 130 million plus add-ons. Yeah, we want them. We'll give you that now. Instead of 110 million, because they know they're not going to get him for 110 million. Isak's right as well. He wants to go to a bigger club. He's got ambition. He's not going to fulfil his ambition at Newcastle. Yeah, and it's wrong. He shouldn't say, "No, I'm not going to play for them again." He could do it nicely and say, "Look, guys, I want to go." Liverpool are obviously in contact with the agents. They should put the money up front and say, "Here we are. We want the player now." And, they've got a point of view as well. So you have
of
to
course.
be fair on both ends.
But Ricky, you think that Isak could not fulfil his career ambitions at Newcastle?
No, because let's be honest. I know they're not going to win the Premier League. They're not going to win the Champions League. Yeah, they're a decent club. They're well run. Also, as well, Isak has to be careful, because what's going to happen is he's going to end up going to Liverpool. Imagine the backlash and the booze he's going to get from the Newcastle fans.
Oh, absolutely. And you boys play them at the end of this month, and it's live and exclusive in talkSPORT. Ricky, thank you for that. Charlie, I want to squeeze you in. You've been waiting patiently. So many calls, but you're with us. Big Newcastle fan. What do you want to say?
I agree with Kevin. I'd keep him in the reserves for the next year. But there is one deal that I would take from Liverpool. They offered 110 million. Newcastle need a midfielder. Why not 110 million and Harvey Elliott? I think that would be a nice deal, and I can see both parties agreeing to that. And secondly, if I can just say, Simon, I'm a big fan. Why don't you just apply for the job at Newcastle? Go in there and just sort it all out. And I think you'd have a backing of 100,000 Newcastle fans there.
Do you apply for jobs?
I don't apply for jobs. I doubt it. Can you imagine a Londoner going up to Newcastle, like London Mafia, when Dennis Wise and Tony Jimenez and all that crowd went up to Newcastle? I don't think you guys took very well to them, did you?
Yeah, no, exactly. Charlie, before you leave us, do you think Isak could fulfil his career ambitions at Newcastle at your place?
I think before the statement today, I think it would have been a bit 50-50. I personally would have said yes. But if this is true, what's coming out today, then I don't see a way back. But I wouldn't sell unless it's right for Newcastle, because otherwise you're just going to open the door for anyone to do that. It's a World Cup year. Isak's only going to be hurting himself, surely.
What kind of season do we expect Manchester United to have this time around after the quite indifferent end to the season last time around? Of course, under Ruben Amorim, who came in mid-term, but of course got them to a European final, which they lost to Tottenham. And then they had a hugely indifferent finish with a very highly unusual placing for Manchester United in the Premier League at the end of the Premier League campaign. What can we expect this time around? On board this time, Cunha, Mbeumo, and now Sesko. So nobody better than former defender Rio Ferdinand to tell me, what about United this time?
Definitely on the right track in terms of the way that they're working together. The togetherness that I saw there was a very kind of positive outlook for me. But also I think it was the big thing I walked away from there thinking is, please do a bit more in the window. And they have. They've gone and bought a number 9 now. And you're looking at it like, well, OK, they've got a front three that scored more goals collectively than the whole of the Man United team last year. So that's a definite upgrade in that sense, but still greedy and want 1 or 2 more.
I mean, I can't imagine what your worst finish was as a United player under Sir Alex. But I mean, 15th last season. I mean, United fans must be still scratching their head. You must be still scratching your head about that.
Yeah, only because of the success of the club over the given years. Not just my generation, before me as well. I think it's the club's steeped in a history of winning. And to see the club kind of where they finished last season, the temperature around the club for different reasons since Sir Alex and his regime has left, there's been a downward spiral, but the negativity is obvious, and it's expected if you finish that low, given what the past has been like. But I think this game's about cycles. You've got to have your moments where you've got to lick your wounds a bit, but then you've got to show the fight to come back, and the spirit of this football club suggests that we will come back. It's just we want it sooner rather than later.
There's still time, Rio, obviously, for them to do business before the window shuts. That said, do you think we're really about to see what this guy Amorim is really about?
Well, yeah, I've always said that he needs to get some of his players in to be able to implement his tactics. He has a particular way of playing that needs a certain DNA of a certain player. Until he gets a few of those in the door, it's difficult to judge him. I think now he's had time through pre-season to train the team, to get to know the players better. He's recruited now, I think 4 players he's got through the door now. I still think he needs another window. But I would like to think now we're going to see more traits of a Ruben Amorim team this season.
Are you worried at the guys at the back?
I'm worried about the first 6 games of the season, if I'm honest.
Really?
I think it's a hard start. I think Liverpool, I think we might have City in there, Arsenal first day of the season, amongst some other hard games. So it's a very difficult start. And all that good work that's being done on the training field right now, a couple of bad results can undo that. And we know what it's like at Man United, the pressure that comes with that, the attention, the focus, the negativity then spreads through. It becomes a difficult place to be. So I hope they get some decent results early on to really kind of weather that, steady the ship and let us move on and build some confidence.
But when you were there, Sir Alex had people like you and Vidic and umpteen people that could lift spirits. Yeah. Have they got that?
I think they have, but I think they need results. I think the likes of myself, Nemanja Vidic, the Roy Keanes of this world, the Giggsies, they'd struggle here in this climate, the way it's going. It's hard there to be under that pressure where you can't see a result coming around the corner or you can't see any consistency. So I think all of us would struggle in this environment, but I think they've got to build something together now that's going to be unique in Manchester United's history.
Are you happy to see Garnacho go if he goes? Would you be happy to see Scott McTominay come back?
I don't think that's going to happen, but I think Garnacho, I've said for a long time, as a football player, I wouldn't want to see him go. But football's not just about what you do out on the pitch. I think everything's got to marry up. And if the manager deems that he's not the right type that he wants in the football club, then we've just got to hold our hands up and say, right, you've got to do what you've got to do. But I'd love to see Garnacho at the club for years because I think he's an asset.
Are you worried about Liverpool if they get Isak?
It'd be a nightmare because that makes them a real challenge on every front. Depth in their squad. Ekitike, they've got him as well. They become a massive problem. They're going to be a problem anyway in the Champions League, but I think with Isak, big problems.
Final question, who wins it?
The Premier League. I think the recruitment they've done, given they've won the league as well, and what they've got already, their experience, I think Liverpool have to be the team to beat, unfortunately.
And a glance to the camera at the end, if you're watching on YouTube there, it's Liverpool and only Liverpool, says Rio. If they get Isak, even more so.
Well, they're the current champions and they've strengthened. So given they have strengthened, one would expect it to be that they are, in most people's minds, the favourites. But, Arsenal have strengthened. Arsenal have brought in players. Zubimendi, Goicoechea up top. People said that they're centre forward away from being a serious challenger and that they finished second in the league on 3 occasions now, and that the next step is to win the league. So Arsenal will be in the mix. It's not about what Liverpool do, it's about what other people do.
Yeah, sure.
So Liverpool will do what they do, and Arsenal will do what they do, and Man City, I think it's a fascinating Premier League. It's a fascinating Premier League every year.
Oh, it is.
But all the challenges.
This time around, you're right, Simon.
Yeah, there's so much.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that are going on with obviously clubs that are coming up and promoted that are big football clubs like Sunderland and Leeds that are coming into the Premier League with big fan bases. Then, in Sunderland's a case they've been out for some time. Leeds have bounced back after a couple of years away. And you look at it now and you think this Premier League shapes up to be great. And look at the players that are being brought in. So Liverpool I think, will be the team to beat to win the league. If you finish above Liverpool, you win the league.
As you were getting the impression that was an event in central London, and time is against you. You're against the clock to do an interview like that. So we got through as much material as we possibly could, Rio and myself. Were you surprised to hear him say that likes of himself, Keane, Giggs, would have a problem trying to be successful in the current United setup?
Well, I don't know if he knows. I mean, obviously, I don't know if they're on the training ground. I mean, they know what they know. And obviously they know the football club very well, and they've played for it in a different version of itself. I don't know how close they would be to the training ground environments. I would suspect that by the very nature of having a Rio Ferdinand and Roy Keane in that environment, then you wouldn't have the problems that you've got now.
Yeah.
And the reasons why they have got the problems they've got now is because they haven't got Rio Ferdinands, Roy Keanes, Ryan Giggs, and other people that were A, very good at what they're doing, but B, very strong leaders. We clearly have looked at Man United for some time and said it lacks leadership. And leadership was not something that it lacked when it had Rio Ferdinand and specifically Roy Keane in its mix.
Exactly.
So I think it was a sort of an oxymoron, what he was saying there.
I mean, of course, McTominay's not going to go back because he's become a regular and a big favourite at Napoli. Maybe further down the line in his career, he might end up back at Old Trafford, who knows? But he's saying, he would wish Garnacho was still going to be there. But Garnacho's more than likely going to go to Chelsea. It's all going to be changed at United, Simon,
for the better,
in terms of the personnel. But that's what I'm coming to. Last season's finish, is that as low as they're going to go?
Well, I thought so. I thought that you can't bounce until you hit the bottom. And for whatever reason, Ruben Amorim wanted to make sure they hit the bottom. Whether it be through the selection of players that were playing in positions that they weren't capable of doing, or whether it was the culture that he was engendering by telling everybody how bleeding awful they were, or whether it was simply that he just wanted to weather the storm of getting through this season, was prepared to take all the slings and arrows to rebuild the football club in the image that he wants. And we'll see if he's the real deal.
Do you think he will be? Do you think they'll turn the corner and he'll be the business, or do you think he'll go?
Well, it's difficult to say, because at this moment in time, you can only go on what you've seen. What you've seen is he's done some very significant things in Portugal. He photobombed every football club during the summer last year to try and get himself a job, which doesn't seem the behaviour of an elite manager. He's come in there, he's made Man United worse, which surely can't be the default setting of any manager, which has created myself a different set of challenges. The people that have employed him, I think, have got most things wrong currently. In terms of, I bow to the acumen of Jim Ratcliffe in every other walk of life. And, people can cite the fact, you lost a fortune in a football club, so what do you know about it? But I know what mistakes look like, and I know what judgment calls are, and I know that Ten Hag should have been taken out in the summer and not left to go in October, November, December, which everyone said was going to happen, and what duly happened. So what a waste of time and energy that was. And I look at this and the pursuit of the pursuit of Dan Ashworth.
Yeah.
The idea that Dave Brailsford provides solutions, all of these things to me don't give me a confidence in the selection process. So that means, to go to your question and to compartmentalise that, I don't know, because Amorim has shown me nothing. He's shown me how to make a side worse. He's shown me how not to handle media. He's shown me how to talk about things and then backtrack on it and say it's because I'm a young manager. You're the manager of Man United. You don't get your age brought into the equation. You're the manager of Manchester United. And so I will only be able to answer that question when this season kicks off and we're 10 games in, and whoever they're playing, they're Arsenal the first game of the season, then Fulham, then Burnley, whoever else they've got, we'll see then. But I like the signings. I think they're going to improve them. I don't agree with Rio's assessment on Garnacho. I think he's a little runt. He should be drop-kicked out of Man United at the first available opportunity for a decent amount of money, because he doesn't understand which football club he's playing for. And I'm not interested in his opinions about who didn't support him, who didn't clap him when he wasn't, when he scored a goal, or which football club strip he can wear to appreciate Marcus Rashford's contribution. Okay. I'm not interested in any of that. I'm interested in a player that plays for arguably the biggest club in English football and respects that opportunity, and he doesn't.
Crystal Palace continue to be in the news. They were in the news yesterday, of course. In the news because they've been winning. But it's the ramifications of those wins which comes into question. Crystal Palace won the Community Shield at the weekend, of course. Before that, they won the FA Cup. It was a great end to the season for them. They beat Manchester City in the final on a famous day at Wembley, and for the first time they won the FA Cup. That entitled them to play Europa League football, but because of the involvement of former co-owner John Textor, who was in the studio very recently with Simon and myself, billionaire co-owner John Textor, Palace were said to be in breach of UEFA's multi-club ownership rules and were thrown out of the Europa League this upcoming season and will have to compete in the Europa Conference League. Palace appealed against that decision, and of course we know that yesterday they lost that appeal, and whether they like it or whether they don't, it's the Europa Conference League for them this season, described by you, Simon, now and again as the runt of the litter of European football.
Which it is.
Which it is, okay, in your view. Palace, this lunchtime, have come out with a very hard-hitting statement.
Is it?
Some key lines out of it, Simon. At a time when we should be celebrating our victory in the Community Shield at Wembley, the decision by UEFA, and followed by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, shows that sporting merit is rendered meaningless. When we won the FA Cup against City on that momentous day in May, our manager and players earned the right to play Europa League football. We have been denied that opportunity. It appears that certain clubs, organisations and individuals have a unique privilege and power. So the suggestion there being, in Palace's eyes this lunchtime, there's a kind of them and us scenario here.
Yep.
While we respect the CAS tribunal members, the process is designed to severely restrict and, in our case, make it almost impossible to receive a fair hearing. So they say they didn't even get a fair hearing. This should be a turning point for football. UEFA must fulfil its mandate to pass coherent rules which are properly communicated and applied, with reasonable cure periods to resolve uncertainty and consistent sanctions.
Yeah.
Treating all clubs equally with a proper appeal process. Although we continue to take legal action on the next steps, we will compete in the Europa Conference League with the same determination and will to win that characterises this incredible club. What's your take on all of that? To me, it sounds like too little, too late.
Well, I think there's a lot of it that has merit. I think the fundamental message is absolution from their own responsibilities, which is that they sold shares to somebody, allowed him to buy another football club, and ignored UEFA's governance, despite being clearly evidence that they knew what it was and provided for it in their own accounts. And so this is an issue. I mean, I don't admire things about Steve Parish because of my personal experiences of him, but his achievements at Palace have been remarkable. He's done a brilliant job for Crystal Palace. He's done a brilliant job for Steve Parish as well. But he's made a mistake here.
They missed the deadline.
They've made a mistake. And they've made a mistake. They decided to sell shares in the football club. They decided to accept the principles of the investment that's put in place. They knew the governance, despite their ridiculous proclamations that they didn't, because they provided for it in their own accounts that were filed at the end of 2024. So it's silly. Now, I agree with him entirely that this is unfair. The whole issue of governance in sport is beginning to conflict sporting merit, but without governance, you don't have a framework. So it's about the right governance. He references the European Court of Justice and suggests that the European Court of Justice made it clear that rulings similar to this will have greater scrutiny from the courts going forward. Oh, watch yourself, Steve, because it wasn't so long ago that the European Court of Justice ruled about freedom of movement for players inside contracts and potentially unwind the entire transfer system. So don't be too clever about bringing in the European Court of Justice as having a higher level of scrutiny, because they've just scrutinised the Diarra case, which enabled players to remove themselves from contracts. So you be careful how you use that particular reference point. They're going to do nothing. They're going to have a little shout and tell you how disappointed they are, remove themselves from any equation. And people were observing yesterday that my issue is with Parish. No, it's not. I think he's run the football club brilliantly. But my personal experience is irrelevant. I think he's run a football club brilliant. And Palace have gone through a unique period of success because of his involvement. But they've made a mistake here. And you can blame everybody else but yourselves if you want. You can say you haven't been given a fair hearing. I'm sure Kaz would have something to say about whether that's a fair hearing or not. You can talk about the appeal process and the fact that you weren't able to get disclosure during the appeal process I'm assuming with UEFA rather than CAS, because I think disclosure formed a part of the CAS appearance, which is the reason why Nottingham Forest and Olympic Lyon were in the hearing.
But you often demand that nuance and context should be applied to everything.
Yeah, of course.
Not here, it would seem. This was a simple case of you missed a deadline, Crystal Palace.
Yes.
And because of that, you are being demoted. There's a key line in here for me, Simon.
And you couldn't convince us about decisive influence as a result of it. And you couldn't convince them ultimately, factually, that you weren't part of a multi-club ownership.
Right.
Multi-club ownership is the nuance and context. If the nuance to it is, if you have an ability to be in a multi-club, or you are being indicated that one of your significant shareholders is part of a multi-club ownership. And by the way, let's have it right, David Blitzer is categorically probably more multi-club ownership than actually John Textor is. So you could have that conversation about Bromby and their participation in the European Conference League.
Well, that apart, I think you would concede, though, that Cass here didn't care about nuance and context. It's simple. There was a deadline, you lot missed it.
Yeah, but you're taking nuance and context as to be background noise and to be unconsumed or unaware of other facts that contribute to the outcome. There aren't any other facts. The facts in this case...
There's no excuse.
There's no excuse. There's no context and nuance.
What do you make about the fourth line? It appears that certain clubs, this is Crystal Palace's words, it appears that certain clubs, organisations and individuals have a unique privilege and power. Now, I take from that, would they have kicked out from the Europa League Manchester United or Barcelona or something like that? It's us. It's poor little Palace.
But that's the point that he wants to make. Now, I'd have a bit more respect.
Is he right on that?
Well, he may well be. He may well be, because we talk about a big six. We talk about the voting rights inside the Premier League. We talk about how people operate in a certain way. The more interesting one is the line where they compound the injustice. Clubs that appear to have huge informal arrangements with each other are also allowed to participate and even possibly play against each other. Now, I'm assuming he means Nottingham Forest and Lyon. And I assume he's pointing at an underlying relationship between Marinakis and Textor, because there's been lots of assertions about how Nottingham Forest have done deals with Lyon during a period of time which has helped both football clubs. So I'm assuming he's saying that. I'd rather he said it rather than infer it, but perhaps he doesn't want the legal heat as a result of it. This is a statement saying we want to absolve ourselves from any responsibility for the position that we put ourselves in. The law is an ass. The law is an ass. But you knew that it was an ass. And you chose to allow that ass to kick you up your ass.
Yes.
So here we are with the bottom line is that Palace brought it upon themselves. Is it fair? Is it just? Is it right that there's the football clubs that have more influence and power? Yeah, there probably are. Is it right? Probably not. Is it the way that the world hangs together? Probably. And if you had created a situation, if Nottingham Forest can find their way through their challenges, why couldn't Crystal Palace find their way through theirs?
Exactly.
Marinakis was subject to the same rules.
Exactly.
Nottingham Forest might have been a massive football club when Brian Clough was there. But it's been languishing outside the Premier League for the best part of a quarter of a century. But if
Forest knew the rules, you're right.
They will say the reasons why they knew the rules is because what does Marinakis own? Olympiacos. Where do they regularly compete in? European competitions. But by Palace's own admission, they knew that there was governance changes. They provided it in Schedule G of their accounts, their own FC.
This statement this lunchtime need an apology.
From who?
From whoever wrote the statement, from Crystal Palace itself, to their own fans.
No. Look, Parish...
It's their mistake.
Parish has made a mistake, and he...
Simon, it's a whopper.
Yeah, it's a mistake. He's made lots of good decisions, and it's a really unfortunate set of circumstances, and part of me thinks good about the time you had to come up with a few things you've gotten away with. There's another part of me that feels very sorry for the Crystal Palace fan base.
Of course, because you're a Palace fan.
There's also another part of me that recognises this man has presided over a significant period of massive investment in a football club, a significant period of success, and he has to be given the prerequisite amount of respect for it. And people now jumping on his, on his grave, saying it's all down to you. Yeah, it is down to Parish. It absolutely is. But does that mean that everything that he's done is good? It gets wiped away because he's made one mistake. You show me everybody in life that makes mistakes.
Of course, I agree with you.
So the fact of the matter is, he's going to have to take a bit of medicine. What he's trying to do now is absolve himself from the responsibility. He can't blame Textor. He can't blame UEFA. He can't blame the Court of Arbitration of Sport. He can't blame the other powerful football clubs. Have a look at yourselves and what you didn't do. And if you'd have done it, you wouldn't be in this position.
And Palace this lunchtime finish off by saying they'll continue to take legal advice.
They're going to do nothing.
But, incidentally, we'll compete in the Europa Conference League with the same determination and will to win.
Well, I think I'm probably in the same place as Newcastle fans this morning, a little bit frazzled by the whole Alexander Isak situation. This has been rumbling on for the best part of a month now, since he didn't attend the pre-season tour to the Middle East, since he decided not to use Newcastle's training facilities when he was injured and instead went over to his former club Real Sociedad and used their facilities. And now, as David Ornstein at The Athletic reported, usually so on the pulse with such matters, he's told Newcastle he has no intentions to reintegrate and play for the club again. Now, obviously, that stance would change, I think, if we get to September the 1st and he is still a Newcastle player. But I think this is really the last great power play in what has become the biggest poker match in the Premier League this summer for Isak to try and force his move. And I slightly disagree with Simon. I think this does almost make his position untenable with the Newcastle fans, with teammates in that dressing room as well. And certainly, as I spoke to you guys about yesterday, with Eddie Howe, who to me looks thoroughly peeved off with the whole situation.
Yeah, Alex is entitled to his opinion. I mean, I think players care about themselves. I don't think dressing rooms get lost over players' behaviour, because players are more motivated about the individual concerns they have for themselves. Newcastle are not a willing seller. So the onus lies really with Liverpool, has always lied with Liverpool. If Liverpool want to buy this player, then it's Liverpool's job to make the running, not Newcastle's.
Yeah.
The challenge for me is in all of this, there's a lot of supposition going on. No one's ever heard Newcastle turn around and say they want £150 million. No one's ever heard that. That's a suggestion as to what they want. They might be prepared to do less. They might be prepared to do more. Who knows? But the terms of reference for me are Newcastle's position should be very clear. We don't want to sell this player. We will sell this player. And I don't mean supposition. I mean public domain stuff. I mean clear lines of communication that are transparent, that are not opaque, that everyone understands where they are. So it's not being debated in the public domain in a certain way in the market square with people putting their two-penny in. We don't want to sell this player. If we sell this player, if Liverpool want to buy this player, the offer, we'll accept offers of £150 million with no delayed payments. Very simple. Over to you, Liverpool. Yep. Over to you, player.
But yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, yes, Simon, but you and I know how it works. You don't get public statements like this. You don't get Tom Werner or someone at Liverpool come out and say, here's our stance on that. But then you get... We want 150 million. We will bid 150 million. Whatever.
Okay. Well, then you get situations like this, don't you? Because at bigger football clubs, it's very clear where people stand. It's very clear what happens to players in certain situations. And to have allowed Newcastle to have allowed this to have developed into the fact that the player thinks he can train with Sociedad, whether it was his idea or whether the club introduced it, I don't know. Whether the player thinks that he can back channel through the media to be able to create pressure on the circumstances. I genuinely believe that if you lack leadership and leadership doesn't stand to the front of the equation, then the vacuum gets filled by other people, like the media, like an agent, like aspects of a player utilising certain mouthpieces in the media to be able to impart the wisdom that they wish to impart. And if you've got strong leadership, it doesn't happen.
Where are Newcastle going at the moment, Alex? Are we talking, as has been reported, Nicholas Jackson?
Well, I think those conversations have been ongoing for a couple of weeks now between Chelsea and Newcastle and Nicholas Jackson's advisors. I think he's actively been touted around, actually, by his agent, because he realises that he's gone from the main man in attack at Chelsea probably to third choice behind João Pedro and Liam Delap. I reported a couple of weeks ago that Chelsea have looked at the market. They've looked at what certain players have been sold for, the likes of Cunha and Mbumo, and they're looking at between 70 and 80 million pounds for Nicholas Jackson. I don't see Newcastle paying that, but talks will continue to try and drive that price down. I think there is a bit of interest there. Samu, forward at Porto, who nearly joined Chelsea actually a couple of windows ago, is another potential option. And I have been told they've made inquiries around Strand Larsen at Wolves, but I wouldn't necessarily see him as a direct replacement for Isak. I think in order to enable Isak to make this move to Liverpool, and at the moment Liverpool are keeping their own counsel, they're waiting in the wings for Newcastle to get their ducks in a row. I maintain they need two forwards because they've already lost Callum Wilson. Johan Wissa we expected to develop this week. He would be a Wilson replacement. And then they need to get a Samu, an Ollie Watkins potentially, or a Nicholas Jackson.
But that's a silly narrative. They didn't lose Callum Wilson. They let him go. They can go and buy the Brentford boy.
Yeah, but they're a striker down, Simon.
Sure, but they didn't lose him. They didn't misplace him. They're in control of their own destiny. They can go and buy the Brentford striker if they offer proper money for him. The circumstances with the Šeško transfer, he didn't want to go to Man United. They didn't lose him either. Man United took him. So the reality of Newcastle's situation is isolation. You isolate Isak, you make a decision going forward, because notwithstanding it, you're still going to need strikers anyway. So they can get the Wissa deal done anytime they want, Newcastle. anytime they want. They're not short of a bob or two. They're not going to challenge with PSR. They can buy Wissa, get him across the line. Callum Wilson, they decided, we don't want you anymore. You're not reliable enough and fit enough for us, so we're going to let you go out the door, and you've gone on a pay-and-play deal with West Ham. The only challenge that Newcastle have got this moment in time is issue around Isak. The other things they can fix themselves.
Okay. He's on one this morning, Alex, but go with it.
Well, they did offer Callum Wilson a similar deal, I understand, to what he signed at West Ham, but I think he just felt a change of scenery was needed and maybe get more game time at West Ham all the time Isak was staying. But the fact of the matter is they are short-handed. Here we are.
True.
They play on Saturday.
But they can change that, can't they, if they want to?
Yeah.
Yeah, but their best player doesn't want to play for him. His backup option has left the club. At the moment, they've only got young Willis Sula, even.
But they can sign the boy, like I just said, they can sign the boy from Brentford. They're not going to Brentford. Brentford are not going to sell him for 25 million quid. They know he's not going to sell them for 25 million quid. So they're doing to Brentford what Liverpool appear to be doing to them, which is not paying what Brentford want for the player.
I know where Alan McCoyster's gone, Alex. He's heading out to Italy. The UEFA Super Cup final tomorrow night. Paris Saint-Germain against Tottenham. And Tottenham looking at Eberechi Eze at Palace. Am I right?
They are, and the fascinating development here is that we were under the impression that his £68 million release clause expired 2 weeks before the start of the season. I've had confirmation from sources close to Palace this morning. Actually, that doesn't expire until Friday, when, of course, the Premier League season kicks off. We've got Bournemouth-Liverpool live on talkSPORT. So they've got a bit of time, Tottenham, if they want to pay the full £68 million. Our information is they'd rather get him for a bit cheaper. Again, I'm sure Simon will say just pay the asking price, but they value him at 55 to £60 million. Arsenal have sort of kept Eze hanging all summer. I think the issue they've got is, like Tottenham, they see Eze as a number 10. They've already got Martin Odegaard. Kai Havertz, if he's not going to play up front because of Gyökeres, is a number 10. And they promised Nwaneri minutes in that position as well. He can play on the left, but they've still got Martinelli and Trossard, Arsenal. So I think Tottenham could well be in the box seat here. And their need is greater, isn't it? Because they've lost James Maddison. They've not signed Morgan Gibbs-White. It's been a quiet summer so far. But Tottenham fans shouldn't take that, I'm told, as a lack of ambition for Daniel Levy. They've got funds to spend if the right deals become available, and this Eze deal could well be one of those.
Okay, let's finish with Donnarumma. Is he on the way to the Premier League? Of course, PSG goalkeeper.
Well, you mentioned the Super Cup, Jim. He's been left out of the PSG squad for the Super Cup. That obviously hasn't gone down well at all. We're expecting some kind of statement from Donnarumma. It looks pretty clear that his days in Paris are numbered. He wants to come to the Premier League, and maybe Manchester United might just seize an opportunity here, because I think Ruben Amorim knows that he needs to upgrade his goalkeeper. Andre Onana has had, well, hazardous couple of years, really. And if they can get a goalkeeper of the calibre of Donnarumma, maybe for a relatively modest fee, I think this is a deal that Manchester United could well explore. I think it would be a game changer. I think you look at what they've done already this summer. They've completely revamped in attack. Yeah. They're looking to bring in a defensive midfielder. Although, can I just shoot down suggestions that Carlos Baleba is only earning 12 grand a week at Brighton and therefore wants to move? That's absolute nonsense that he's only on 12 grand a week. You're talking championship wages there. So far, no bid for Baleba. But Donnarumma in United, I think, definitely one to keep an eye on.